Namaste. Good morning. Yes. Today we are going into something which is inbuilt, but also which is a coming up field and coming up way of looking at dance and dance education. In dance education, it has been very necessary or appropriate for us to emphasize and maintain one or another view of ourselves as a field during our history. Dance as physical education, as an creative art activity, performing art, related art, discipline and professional specialization have been all been orientations that has allowed us different lines of development in the knowledge, practice and institutionalization. Although none of these orientations precluded important awareness, thought and progress in a full spectrum of questions and interest, one would suggest that overall issues of balance in what should ground and motivate our work have developed in accordance with them. Dance has been a path many have followed. Beginning with a mother's hopes, it has become a playground, a challenge, a site of personal struggle, a place to rest and heal, a world of experience and meaning quite beyond anything that one would have imagined with the first shuffle steps. One is offended, delighted, fascinated, bored, encouraged, and deeply shaped by dance. It is heartwarming to learn from its capacities to serve the people. One has to face up to the negative as well as the positive uses to which it can be put. It all depends. In inevitable conclusion is that we take dance ourselves, you and our times to be in motion. With respect to form, function and meaning, dance changes in intention, in looks, in its value, in relation to the relevant sources and context. If this is sounding postmodern, pluralistic, holistic or feminist, it is true. It has always been true. The scholarship has come to be lived journey of sense making through dancing, teaching, art making, watching, reading and all significant interchanges. One also must recognize the need to be a single voice at this time in order to play a role in the charting our views of our field. A professional organization, like any national body, exists under the assumption that institutionalized dance can be affected by its collective activities. It seems always to be a matter of selective maintenance and change to meet current realities better while trying to create the next. The poetics and praxis suggests that both dynamics and meaningfulness in and about dance, while acknowledging the complexities and particularities of our theories and practices. There is a mystery and discipline to our work. Our background is rich in color and very complication. In the context of dance education, we came early to assume the importance and value of understanding selected physical bases and factors associated with human movement. We also gave cognizance to theories and principles associated with learning, well-being and education as they were defined for us. Participational factors in the creation and practice of dance have been emphasized and supplemented by commitments to performance and related arts concerns. The discipline has developed with increasing specialization in scholarly inquiry and application. Dance now stands more stronger. The realization of ourselves as humanity or field wherein mechanics is generated, communicated and appreciated in personal and cultural context perhaps is our current challenge in self-perception and actualization. In focusing on the physical, functional, participational and professional, even though concerned with the graceful, artistic, creative, successful and scholarly, we have been subject to losing sight of and faith in most intimate as well as the most social, political and cultural basis of dance and dance processes. In our time of acknowledged pluralism, when it is clear that alternative groups, systems, languages and modes and techniques vie for expression and appreciation, there is every necessity for understanding ourselves in terms that take into account factors relating to source, context, connection, power and means. In a time when we see individual and social crises manifesting themselves in addiction, violence and homelessness, there is every reason to look at ourselves for our greatest transformational potentials. In its simplest application in education, this implies addressing the reality of each individual not just as a physical specimen of unique genetic background and skill development, but as a person of history and circumstance who is in the process of creation or destruction. The success of process depends upon opportunities and the means to profit from experience. The images, symbols, metaphors, myths, stories, ways of engagement and communication which characterize individuals and groups from the web of access and implications for dance. The symbolic life of the student is always relevant. Concepts like body image, self-concept, alignment and talent must more consciously include the larger and deeper realms of symbolic complexity. As important as anatomical structure and physical or psychological principles may be, they are insufficient in addressing art or substantiate individual or social progress. In this vein, it seems important to see composition and choreography more completely as avenues not only for the expression of feelings and creativity in a developmental line of movement, competence and technical craft, but for dealing with the resonance and dissonance of the personal and cultural through the malleable and expandable medium of dance. The professional issue is not about valuing content over the form or process over the product or avant-garde over the traditional. It lies in recognizing the relative strengths and limitations for any single approach and including among the criteria for considering our work evidence of the degree of substantive engagement of the individual in relation to the lived and shared world that is involved. There needs to be more attention to the variables that might tend to affect access and success in all phases of creating, performing or understanding dance. for example, gender, race, class, sexual orientation, or ethnic origin. What dance is understood as humanity, its relation to a fuller range of educational missions is more easily perceived. Dance, like other human and social and cultural phenomenon, provides the data out of which we develop our knowledge of ourselves. The capacity and quality of our feeling and action, as well as the depth and breadth of our connectedness. It is dependent upon our participation in a full cycle of engagement with enterprises such as dance. Although dance has not been traditionally referred to in European derived system of education as an exemplar and carrier of important cultural information, it has certainly been very vital in the traditional Asian and Indian practices of education. In popular culture, dance and imagery from the media dominate informal education and do so without the benefit of informed critical practice. The point now is for dance to see its contribution to the questions and issues of our past, present and future. As our society struggles to see and feel through illusion and think and act past short-term effect, dance has vital experience to consult. It is the business of education, art and dance to review ideas and habits of perception and action. Dance needs to develop a consciousness that allows it to place itself in the mainstream of education as both philosophy and curriculum. As a field, dance needs to revise and reconstruct the definitions, sources and forces it considers relevant to its current forms and status in India and beyond the world. For dance to function organically as a humanity, that is to help people be participants in their times and to fulfill a conscious role in creating the next group for change, it must see itself as educational. Nurturing and building vocabularies and references out of unique individual lives and out of the broader shared system of articulated cultural needs to become an assumed goal and value in considering dance education. Moving dance as a professional field in education towards the humanity, which are themselves undergoing very important and needed reconstruction, represents a shift toward accepting the depth, diversity and the fullness possible in dance. The sphere of significance and consequence already assumed by the field relative to its work would simply grow. Issues, past and present, which are made to so explicit in dance and relate to power or other volatile factors need to be welcomed. The goal would be to encompass and rebalance fundamental elements and possibilities while not forsaking the knowledge, competence and progress derived from the way we have already understood and practiced dance in education. From the point of view, we are amongst the last or only areas in education that have continued to value and nurture the range of human considerations necessary for education to take place. We agree with the determined commitment to dancing and believe that deep immersion inside the process of dance is absolutely paramount. Let us talk about somatic. What is it? Let us discuss. When one acknowledges the human life of dance, seeing people as source and manifestations of its vitality, it is apparent that one must look to the human in process, as well as to forms and techniques to understand and guide dance. The body has been the explicit representation and focus of study of dance, intervention and meditation in dance. The concept of body has tended to be narrowly constructed in physical terms, emphasizing skeletal muscular functioning. The way of progress has been primarily as external interventions, whether this be thought as the mind of the dancer or the acts of the teacher. The human in process is obviously much more than the body seen along such a limited channel, even if that channel is well researched and documented. Body work, the body therapies, the holistic methods which have come to be so important to dancers in recent years have begun to expand somewhat the spectrum of experiential relevances and biological systems believed to be necessary to consider when dealing with dancers and the change. The pattern of use in the field still does not redress the imbalance of concerns. Those aspects most closely associated with feelings and perceptions, and to a greater extent meaning and communication, remain union targeted into conscious theories and pedagogy. Somatic allows one to think deeply personal, both biological and psychological concerns. There is a layer or a realm which has long been considered fundamental to a consideration of dance, sometimes to the exclusion of any other layers of the realm. The somatic area is so unevenly understood that it includes the most mysterious and primal, as well as the most scientific differentiated human processes. Techniques of the intervention range among the mystic and occult, the traditional and classical, and the scientific and technological. The point here is that dance involves the human process and context. However, this idea may be defined. The process and context are selectively understood as human or body. Process in dance has tended to refer to training, learning, performing, creating, and recently reading. The processes that have been most important to us have obviously depended on assumptions and goals of our involvement with dance. The same would seem to be so of the contexts we assume as relevant. For example, the gym versus the stage or community plaza, the self versus the audience, the field, the critic versus the ancestors or the financiers. There are somatic considerations in every aspect of process and context. How people are readied and set to dance or relate to it. Breath, attention, awareness, passion, postural configuration, sensitivity, impulsivity, empathy, neuromuscular differentiations, kinesthetic and psychic references are examples of factors considering in the realm of the somatic. Every recognizable dance form or tradition has characteristic somatic demands and satisfactions. It is interesting and potentially very relevant to educators to note the different configurations represented by dance forms and techniques. Those generally available in dance education as well as those commanding popular participation in society. The somatic realm, although limited in conception, has often dominated thinking about dance in Western culture, and in so doing, the most basic issues such as sex, gender, race, and authority have controlled its consideration. Also, the field of dance education in the United States developed in relation to physical education, whose early leaders were most often health and medical practitioners. The predominance of training and fitness, male culture, and sports provided ground in which the significance of the arts was minimal. The circle was for a long time drawn very tightly around the body and the instrumentality of activities to its well being. When dance is realized as a participation not only in neuromuscular action but in the dynamism of kinesthetic and aesthetic perception, it is apparent that one must look outward away from the activating self to see the play and articulation of qualities and forms. It is only then that dance becomes the subject. The aesthetic layer and realm is not so much people as pattern in structures, episodes, stories, and environments. Perception holds sway and is consciously mediated. Lines, rhythms, textures, timbres, efforts, plots, repetitions, counterpoints, and the like are the rewards and tools of perception. The medium, in its infinite plasticity, is ordered and reordered. Vocabularies, craft, and repertories of imageries are developed and dissolved. Perception is opened and closed, the sensory becoming ground and figure, freeing imagination to celebrate and create. Realizing that aesthetic realities are as real and fundamental to dance and dancing as those associated with the body is important throughout the curriculum. The focus of the technique class is often limited primarily to differentiating and articulating somatic action, understood as body parts, skills, and steps. When the aesthetic layer is valued, the differentiations and articulations of the medium in terms of properties and qualities shares attention. Aesthetic tasks are made explicit. Image and imagination are not something simply used as a means to getting a physical skill perfected. They are the material and knowledge which creates the dancing. In this regard, aesthetic vocabularies are very helpful in mediating dance learning and appreciation. The wealth of discrimination possible from combining our own traditional vocabularies with those other arts would seem obvious. In addition to movement, our history has tended to favor terminology associated with music and sometimes the visual arts as well. The worlds of drama, poetry, film, and television are still relatively unfulfilled. Informally and as individual teachers, we are sure to draw from all conceivable areas to mediate kinesthetic and aesthetic perception and accomplishment. In developmental curriculum planning, however, it does become necessary to consciously select the languages and words that will guide attention and enhance clarity in decision making and communication in all phases of dance. As dance in education has developed more fully its performing arts framework, it has certainly understood itself as an aesthetic phenomenon and has blossomed in the amount and quality of dance it has produced. The society, The university and many schools seem to be supporting the importance of art making and performance as a vehicle for not only personal but cultural creativity and expression. These institutions seem to expect a yield in production which is viable as professional communication and sometimes capital. This expectancy and orientation, association, success with careers in the performing arts and status in the marketplace has made it necessary for us to distinguish between an aesthetic phenomenon and a pragmatic one. Learning that we are a part of the society and how to better function within it has added a considerable level of maturing to our field. There is no doubt. Much further we need to go in order to achieve the objectives we set for ourselves. The mundane, however, inevitable seems to threaten the sacred. There are limitations to the pragmatic and the narrowed spectrum of sources and avenues out of which professional dance production has come to depend. If we can discuss on the semiotic of dance, it is the need to express, to communicate, to reveal, to establish a relationship, to celebrate, to worship, to liberate are more motivations associated with dance as a form in all cultures of the world. In context, of course, the motivations in dance are as multiple as people and situations. The question of meaning arises in dance not only for surveying its characteristic processes and cycles as they have been noted and described for centuries, but also in relation to the life of dance in its perspective societies at any one time. As dance is more fully understood as a bearer of symbolic material, it is again refocused towards individual and cultural groups. The re-emergence of expressionalism and the use of text and voice in choreography are strong evidences of the renewed awareness and importance of the semiotic realm in dance. Images, symbols, metaphors, codes and all the terms that attempt to address the way in which dance carries meaning are being explored more fully in all the arts and scholarship in general. Context has become the invigorating and reordering concept for artist, audience and academician. In recognizing the importance of the individual and the cultural group or tradition out of which the dance arises and is fulfilled, one assumes a different relation to the knowledge. The who and why of the dance, the genre and the tradition, the social, cultural milieu are all relevant. Who do we wish to understand and to value? What dance tradition and techniques? What must we know about the individual we are attempting to guide as dancers, choreographers and agents for dance in society? For dance education, the semiotic layer which is present in all dance material has been somewhat difficult to approach. The dance teacher is reminded that she is not a psychologist or psychotherapist when it comes to reading or guiding behavior. Dance is, however, a vehicle for the dancer and the choreographer to bring to form significant material which is both idiosyncratic and common. Performance is often a matter of coming to symbolic consonance with the material. The search for meaning, the generation of symbols and images, and the craft for communication is as necessary to guide as are other aspects of dance. Having the appropriate system of reference as a teacher imposes considerable responsibility. Yet, keeping experiences away from the personal or the culturally specific by providing learning pathways which are primarily formal or functional, limits the diversity and commitment inherent in most groups. So, in every aspect of the dance curriculum, there is the opportunity and necessity to realize the semiotic aspects of the experience. The dancer not only needs to learn how to do and to imagine, but how to mean the material that might be given. Dancing that can be meant and understood, as well as done and imagined, needs to be available. Opportunities for the individuals to create out of themselves and their worlds needs to be valued, even though what may appear is not easy for the teacher to handle. The discipline is created in the mystery of the material, the form and the communication. Education to the words and methods of others must be in balance with our long time output of the single individual. The audience must no longer be allowed to remain primarily an abstraction. It is people who are shown and spoken to and within the dance. The circle of significance can be very small or extend to many, but a circle is a more helpful concept than one-way line. There is a theatre of mutual experience only when awareness shifts away from the self and the static form and into the travels of the play, whether it be weighted toward the semiotic, the aesthetic or the semiotic. The terms have no value inside the event, even though the capacities and achievements to which they refer make all the difference in full participation. The life of the event is always unique, but when the spirit and the architecture of the dance ritual becomes clear, there is more freedom to go where learning, creating or healing might lead. In an educational context, it is very important to provide several dance rituals, each with a different constellation of attributes. A complementary ritual would emphasize pulse, pattern or story with more action and references to social constructions and the personalities involved. The possibilities of the dance play or rituals that appeal to the central themes and challenge or satisfy on many levels are endless. Preparing and participating in experiences and dance experiences which create themselves out of multi-dimensional plans and daily needs has been one wonderful way for us to be a dancer, an artist and teacher. So, in this module, this semiotic and somatic of dance, we have tried to discuss and understand. I know these are little difficult concepts to digest, but if you read and listen carefully, go to some references and introspect, you would easily understand this. Thank you. Namaste.